Hello, everybody, and welcome to Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar here on STL Sports Central. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Stefan Caray. We're going to talk some Cardinals baseball, but maybe not the Cardinals that you're used to hearing about on this show. Whole lot to cover as the season begins to iron out and finish in St. Louis, but a whole lot of other things going on in the minor leagues, particularly on the pitching side. And maybe the title is a dead giveaway of where we're going with this conversation today. But with the struggles of the starting rotation for St. Louis, last night certainly another example of that, are Liam Doyle and Quinn Mathews going to be part of the rotation in 2026? That's a big question mark.
It's a huge question mark, and I think it's a natural one to start to think about as this season winds down and we usher in, Stefan, the Chaim Bloom era of guiding the Cardinals front office and the decision-making on the baseball operations side. You know, what that rotation is going to look like, because there's been some reporting, Katie Wu talking about, maybe Sonny Gray ends up being on the move. If he's willing to waive that no-trade clause, could he end up somewhere like San Francisco? I actually think that would be a great fit for him, and it could fit with where the Cardinals are just in terms of philosophically about 2026, not necessarily ready to put the pedal down on trying to put together a immediate contender next season. And if that's true and you're Sonny Gray, you probably are at a place in your career where you may consider a team that's more actively trying to win at all costs. So if that is the case, regardless of what the return could be for Sonny Gray and how that would play out, it would obviously open up another spot into a rotation that currently, you've got some questions about even feeling like you've got enough to fill 5 roles. And so Michael McGreevy, I think we all would agree, has done enough to really be somebody you can feel good about going in to next season. You mentioned Palante from last night. He was okay, but not great. And it's kind of been a tough recent run of starts for him. And so the plan for the Cardinals next year, what does that look like and how does he fit into it? Matthew Liberatore, another guy that you probably feel a little bit better about, has been able to kind of come around and it looks like he's going to finish this season in a pretty productive way. But after those 3, you kind of look around and go, okay, so what could be there for the Cardinals, especially if they're trading Sonny Gray? Does a Kyle Leahy get a look in spring training to be stretched out? Is somebody else that we're not thinking of an option? Or do we begin, Stefan, to turn to some of the younger players and say, hey, there's an opportunity here to be had? With Quinn Mathews, it's interesting because he's pitched this season at AAA. It would be a natural progression for him to come into spring and maybe fight for a job. Liam Doyle, I think, is a little bit more of a sideways glance because he was just drafted this summer. But when you think about, the way that top picks have moved in recent years, and we've seen a little bit of a sample of him now. He pitched the other day for Springfield, who's on the verge of trying to clinch a playoff berth here. What does 2026 look like for Liam Doyle? And could he join the team at some point? Those 2 prospects could very much shape the way the Cardinals approach this coming offseason in terms of how aggressive they might be to fill a couple of rotation spots. Is it with a longer-term option or sort of a stopgap in mind?
It's very interesting. And again, I would never speak for John Mozeliak or for Chaim Bloom, but it seems like with the Springfield Cardinals going to the playoffs, it gave them a golden opportunity to speed up the process for Liam Doyle to extend his season and get at least a taste of the AA offensive players, which is a good thing for the Cardinals, right? Because a lot of us have talked about it. St. Louis doesn't need players that are 2 or 3 years away. They need players that can help them next year, if not now. And if Doyle can be one of those guys early or midway through the 2026 season, alongside Quinn Mathews, with all the struggles that this rotation has seen, that could be a very good thing for them. Now, I think something that maybe we in the media or as fans haven't done a good enough job of talking about is runway, but not with regards to the offensive players. When I hear runway, I think Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, Victor Scott, their runway. That's what I thought this season was about. I don't think we talked enough about Matthew Liberatore or Andre Palante. And lo and behold, I think we're starting to figure out who these guys really are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And a lot of that conversation was focused on the offensive players. But there have been up and down moments for Matthew Liberatore's season. It was never going to be a situation where the Cardinals were going to remove him for performance, right? If it was detailed that, okay, there's something physically going on or they needed to ease off for any other reason, then that's one thing. But they wanted to see what it would look like. And now you've since built him up to a point where, okay, can this be that new foundation? Can 2026 have fewer of those valleys and more of the Liberatore peaks? Because his body becomes accustomed to what that major league workload looks like over a 6-month season. Whereas previously he had been back and forth with role changes, and he had never really had, since his time in the minors, a full season as a starter. So to do it at the big league level and to be now a couple of weeks away from completing that, running that race and completing it, I think is very meaningful. Even though it wasn't a perfect season, I think it was showed us a lot about what Matthew Liberatore could continue to be for the Cardinals down the road. And then maybe on the other side, Andre Palante comes back down to earth relative to what he did last season. And, the big leagues will tell you who you are after a period of time. Can he adjust back to that? How willing will the Cardinals be to give him that opportunity at whatever the price tag he will make in arbitration to his second year of ARB eligibility this coming off season? Will be interesting to see as well. The runway there, I think, was actually very fruitful for the Cardinals. Just because it doesn't go great for a player in Palante's instance doesn't mean you didn't learn anything and that it wasn't a worthwhile endeavor. I think certainly when you point out Liberatore, that is probably the crowning achievement of what a runway season was to look like.
I agree with your point completely. Now, let's discuss the X's and O's here. Quinn Mathews, let's begin with him. He has looked good from an ERA standpoint, but one of the big issues for him is walks. This season, just looking at his numbers here, he has walked 74 men to 107 strikeouts. That is a big, big problem. And I love Quinn. Had Quinn with me in Katuitt back in 2021 and the Cape Cod Summer Baseball League. That's not going to fly at the major league level. You've got to find a way to lose less hitters.
Yeah, what I would say about that, and last night I believe he pitched, it was a pretty similar story. Stefan had a solid outing where he went 4 innings, gave up a couple of runs, had 4 strikeouts, so a K per inning, but walked 5 hitters as his ERA ticked up a little bit up to 3.93. The one thing I would say for that, though, is the differences, and maybe it won't be that different as time goes along, in the strike zone currently with what we see in AAA versus the big leagues, where you don't have players and umpires kind of catering and adhering to what the ABS system uses. They use the challenge system, but there has been, a lot of conversation about those strike zones down there, really kind of putting the squeeze on guys. And even going back to last year, guys would cycle back and forth, and it would be a true adjustment because umpires, I think, down there have sort of begun to cater what they call to what they know a challenge system is going to give you. And, I don't know what the specifications will be if MLB ends up using kind of what they modeled in spring training this year and very similar to what has been used in the minors for the last couple of years at the high levels. Could be a reason that some of those walks happen, and it could evaporate when you get to the big league level. But as we know, the competition ramps up significantly as you go from AAA to the big leagues. And so you can't necessarily hand wave the walks. It is something that I think Quinn Mathews will have to be paying a lot of attention to. And I imagine there's an exit interview, there's an end of season conversation that happens between Quinn Mathews and the big league coaching staff at some point where they say, here's the things that you want to look to do to be able to be with us next year. But I think that those kinds of conversations with Quinn, they do happen because there is that opportunity. He's knocking on the door. It's a step away. And for him to be able to hone some of those things in, I do think puts him into a spot, Stefan, where Quinn Mathews, maybe a different conversation from Liam Doyle. We can get into him. But Quinn Mathews is, I think, knocking on that door already.
And as somebody who has spoken to Quinn, albeit briefly, he is a player that's extremely self-aware and knows when he's struggling and knows when he isn't. So I think that those conversations will be had in good faith, and he will take it all in stride. Now, a quick reminder, this show is powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. He's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Stefan Caray on Card Central 365. Let's get to this comment here. Genuinely, they need to consider looking outside. Mathews needs more time to develop. I don't see him ready by the start of the season, and Palante just isn't MLB ready anymore, needs a reset. Now, there are a lot of ways that we can attack this, but I think one thing that I'm looking at is the Cardinals right now, their main prospects, their main future from a starting pitching variety are 3 left-handed pitchers. You normally don't see that in a rotation. Now, you get some swing and miss from those 3 guys, which is what they desperately need. But I wouldn't disagree with the point that just across the board, the Cardinals need to go out and find people from a free agent variety. Starting pitching is probably a little bit easier. You can go get an older veteran player for less money that can help teach these guys, especially if you say, hey, we're going to shop Sonny Gray. But I don't know right now if the whole plan is to be hyper competitive in 2026. It might just be to continue to develop and play for 27, 28.
Yeah, I certainly think that that's kind of the line that they're going to have to walk with all of this. You don't want to rush a prospect because of a need at the big league level. And so it feels as though, and to the point that Space is making here, stopgaps are probably the route that you should consider. And you mentioned it, like it's possible to do it. We have seen examples of this. In some work better than others. I always point out Jose Quintana with the Brewers has been a really positive example of this type of way to fill out a rotation and that we've seen from Milwaukee this year. Other times you sign a guy, and it doesn't work out as well. The Cardinals did this a couple of years ago, last year, when it came to Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson at sort of a higher rate, I think, than even what you would need to do when it comes to this offseason. John Mozeliak was, I think, comfortable reaching out and signing those two guys in particular. There's some local ties and some reasons, obviously, with both that it would have made sense. But did they maybe pay a little bit more for the veteran premium of two guys that have had some really good big league careers rather than dipping into that next tier and being able to go out and say, yeah, maybe we don't have past history with a player, but with a new front office in Chaim Bloom, you're able to go out and say, yeah, can we compel a guy to come to St. Louis, Missouri? Maybe that's not a destinational place at this point in time with the way the team is trending. And so you have to pay a little bit more of a premium to get an outside player, a figure that's just not familiar with the Cardinals to come here. Maybe that's possible, but you can find those types of guys. And I almost think the term reclamation project isn't an unfair one to use and to try to pursue. When you think about the way that they have revamped their development, Stefan, you've got now guys like Rob Serfolio and Matt Pierpont that are part of this development team that I think you could go out there and maybe target a reclamation project. I don't know that Dusty Blake was going to, be the Dave Duncan savant on his own, but I think you have now the resources within the organization to pair what Dusty brings to the table with what some of these other guys, the ideas that you can kind of bounce off and say, you know what, as we're looking through, this guy that's in, whatever organization is going to be a free agent, and he didn't have a great season, but we can see the things that we believe we've identified he's doing, that if he fixes ABC, he's suddenly a much more productive player, and we can get this guy for $6 million. Like, those are the types of guys I would like to see the Cardinals go out and target. You can tack on an option at the end of a one-year deal if that's what it takes to get something to happen. But those types of moves where you can allow yourself some time to not just look at your big league rotation and say, well, we need Quinn Mathews by April. We need Liam Doyle by June. Like, you don't want to be in that situation in 2026. And so I think, honestly, especially if Sonny is traded, you look at maybe spending whatever probably you saved on Sonny, and maybe you reinvest that in a couple of pitchers that can buy you some time for these prospects. As an example, if Sonny's to make $35 million and the Giants want him and they'll eat half the contract, be willing as the Cardinals ownership group to spend $14 million total on two starters that can get you by, because I do think you have the bones of a team that can be semi-competitive next year. Heck, they've been semi-competitive this year. They've just fallen off the pace after the deadline, and certainly more recently. But with an offense that will have some tweaks to it, I don't think it should be demonstrably worse next year. The bullpen, we've seen some guys emerge that if you add a little bit and tweak there, for a relatively small outlay, you could potentially kind of organize your pitching in a way that takes you from the 77 wins they're going to have this year to maybe 84. And that might not blow anybody away. But if we project 83, 84, you can certainly overachieve that. And suddenly you're in a wild card spot in that conversation 2 years before most people in our chat believe is going to be the case for the Cardinals.
Heck, if you're at 84 wins at this point, I mean, you're in the playoffs in 2025. And
Exactly.
I think that's great analysis. It can change year by year. I don't think anyone expected, with how well the Mets were playing at one point, how well a bunch of these teams in the National League were playing, that you would have the Diamondbacks, who sold at the deadline, the Reds, and the Giants very much in it. All three teams that kind of had awkward trade deadline plans. So we will certainly see. And again, another thing to consider is, who do you extend? Is that something that is going to happen this offseason? And with that money that they could potentially save on Sonny Gray, or not have to pay if another team takes on part of the contract, do they allocate that money to some of their core that they're trying to keep around? I don't know. It seems like with how many years of control you have for the majority of your players, you might be better suited to go out and get a free agent. But again, I'm very curious to see how they go out and play this. Brenden, a quick aside here is remind everybody about our friends at DraftKings Missouri. Get ready. The wait is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to the Show Me State, and you can sign up today New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December 1st. Download now and place a $5 bet when we go live. DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we do officially go live in Missouri, you're betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live December 1st. That's code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Welcome back to Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar here on STL Sports Central. So we've talked about how the Cardinals might address their pitching in 2026. What do we envision a 2028 rotation looking like? That feels like way too far down the road to even consider. But there are a couple of big names pitching in Springfield, and I did want to talk about what they're doing. They're a win away from going to the Texas League Championship. Potentially, if the Sod Poodles can come back and win a couple of games against the Rockhounds, gets my beloved Amarillo Sod Poodles. But a great game for them the other day, featuring it's Eshawn Henderson, right? That's how you pronounce his name, Eshawn Henderson pitched the other day for Springfield, and he has been so good for them. 6 innings, 3 hits, no runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts in a 3-1 win over the Tulsa Drillers. There are probably a couple of names in that Springfield lineup and roster that will be contributors at the major league level for the Cardinals in the near future.
Yeah, I think that's right. Eshawn Henderson has had a heck of a season at Double-A, 2.59 ERA, 132 innings. Like, you like seeing that workload for a guy at Double-A, and he's a little bit older for the level relative to, when we talk about guys that are just these prospects that come ablazing and they're 21 years old. He's 23. He's going to turn 24 in January. But, man, that is a perfect kind of progression for a guy like him. 134 strikeouts, by the way, in those 132 innings. I anticipate him to be at AAA next year as the season begins. And then, again, another guy who would just be a step away. And I think he is a good example of a guy that's really taken a step with this new development group that the Cardinals have ushered in with some of the guys that have come into the organization, as Chaim Bloom has had the authority to hire, a few pieces and parts to help kind of bolster the ranks down there. And these are the types of guys that those folks are working with. Eshawn Henderson, a great example. And there are others as well at Springfield that as you mentioned, could at some point become factors at the big league level. But even beyond that, like with what we project for the Cardinals in 2026, there are guys that 2 years down the road from there would still be under team control. I know that would be the case for Michael McGreevy. I need to check Matthew Liberatore and see when he does enter into arbitration eligibility. But for as long as he's been around, he's still going to be around. He's not a free agent until after 2029. And so Liberatore would, in theory, be part of a 2028 rotation deeper into arbitration at that point, making a little bit more money. But, I mean, when you think about 2028, I don't think we're much further than that, a couple of years away from finally having the ability to say, okay, the Cardinals have built this development system where the pipeline is there. You've got pitchers emerging from it, and then you use free agency simply to supplement your rotation rather than feel like you have to go out and build half of a rotation every winter after seeing, the pieces and parts that move on from the previous season. Could a 2028 rotation in no certain order, but could it look something like a Quinn Mathews, Liam Doyle, Michael McGreevy, Matthew Liberatore, and if not an Eshawn Henderson or somebody else from Double-A, you go, okay, now we've got somebody from the free agency ranks where we're ready at that point to say sign a multi-year contract to a player that is a bona fide, at least middle of the rotation arm. And suddenly the Cardinals look vastly different. Now, Stefan, injuries happen, especially to pitchers. And so we can't just put it in pen. Wouldn't even put it in pencil at this point. But it's nice to think about the Cardinals being a couple of years away from finally kind of having that development pipeline being where folks would like to see it.
And you have a little bit of depth of the starting pitching variety coming up. If you get them healthy, if you get Takao Roby healthy, you get Tink Hence healthy, you have Henderson, who we mentioned, they can maybe churn through some of their minor league pitchers over the next few seasons if they play their cards correctly. And I think that's when you look at a team like the Brewers, exactly how you find success is when you have a guy that can come in and make a spot start on a Sunday, and you can trust him to go out there and not get absolutely shelled or go and have to throw a bullpen game, that's a very, very big deal. Now, my question to you, Brenden, again, we're not in the prediction business, but I'm curious. The rest of the way for the Cardinals, Brewers, Giants, Cubs, all three are either in the postseason or making a push to be in the postseason. Do the Cardinals win a series the rest of the year?
And I am totally in the prediction business, so I'm happy to see the question. I think they'll win one. Yeah, I think you make a fair point that there are other teams that have much more to play for, it would seem. But doesn't it often seem as though once maybe some of that pressure is off and maybe that's happened for the Cardinals at this point where it's like, yeah, it really isn't going to happen this year. Okay, just go play free, go do what you can to be spoiler. I think the Cardinals could certainly end up clipping a series. I don't know that I would predict them to win more than one. But I still think you're going to see guys that are playing for something, whether it's on an individual basis in the future of their respective careers or, being able to carry some pride in the way that the team finishes. I would take the Cardinals to win at least a series. Yeah.
And this could potentially be the final home series for Nolan Arenado in St. Louis. Do you have any thoughts about his tenure here? I know that people have certainly had a love-hate relationship with him over the last few seasons, but I think all in all, you look at the type of player he is and the net positive that he has been not only on the offensive side, but especially defensively. His career, I think, should be held in nothing but positive regard when he's worn the birds on the bat.
Yeah, there's going to be that little bit of a what if when it comes to guys like him and Goldie, because you had them both at the same time, two guys who feel like future Hall of Fame candidates, and you weren't able to really get not even over the mountaintop, but really to just maybe the base of the mountaintop. You didn't really do much in the postseason with those two guys, and so that's going to kind of linger. But it wasn't really a product of just those two guys, right? There's so many other things going on with the organization over those years, and so I think to pin it on our Hall of Fame caliber names didn't get it done for us is probably not the fair way to look at it. I do think within the context of this last season, it has kind of worn a little bit when it comes to Arenado because the opportunity was there for him to have gone on to greener pastures in the offseason, ended up in a place like Houston where they're contending, they're competitive, and I think he would have been happier there. I think the Cardinals would have been happier to be able to see a full season of Nolan Gorman, see some of those other guys that they were trying to get an idea for. Largely, though, I think that goal has been accomplished. I mean, you look at the plate appearances for a number of those younger players, and if you can't draw conclusions based on that, then I think you're just a little bit too indecisive as a front office. It's time for the next group to come in, Chaim Bloom, to say, bang, 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 here are the guys that I'm building around, here are the guys that I'm going to jettison, and don't use the Arenado thing as an excuse to need more time to kind of decide whether these guys are are lacking something or have yet to show something that you believe could turn them into future mainstays. Arenado, is not responsible for that. And I'll tell you what, he's played an unbelievable third base this year when he's been healthy. His defense has been a joy to watch in 2025. And so largely when you think about Arenado and the way that he came in, you hope that it would bring the Cardinals to the next level. It didn't ultimately do that, but I'm glad he was a Cardinal, and I don't think he will be after this next couple of weeks. I do believe he'll be somewhere else in 26. But I'm glad that, Cardinals fans got a chance to watch him, even if it didn't bring you to the places you were hoping to see the team go in that span. That doesn't take away from some of the really cool things we got to see Arenado do wearing birds on the bat over the years.
We wish him nothing but the best, as well as the Cardinals. The Cardinals will kick off a 3-game series against the Brewers tomorrow, beginning at 7:15 Central Time. Sonny Gray versus Jacob Mizorowski. So be sure to tune in. We will always have the coverage for you here on STL Sports Central. For everyone involved, we thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. For Brenden Schaeffer, who does such an amazing job on really all the media in St. Louis, regardless of if it's college football, if it's basketball, if it's hockey, he does it all. It's always a pleasure to work with him. We will see you a little bit later on STL Sports Central. All right, guys, we will talk to you later. Cardinals trying to win one of their final 3 series of the year against the Brewers, the Giants, or the Cubs.